If you follow the financial headlines, you've probably absorbed the same bleak message. The American starter home is dead, buried under a mountain of record-breaking national median prices. But this chart tells a different story. Based on May 2026 data from Zillow, when the national average plummets down to specific local markets, we find 50 U.S. metros where the typical home value is still under $250,000. In places like Charleston, West Virginia, it drops all the way down to $147,562. And when we take those exact 50 affordable markets and map them geographically, a massive blank space appears. The East and West Coasts are completely wiped clean of cheap real estate. So if affordable housing actually still exists, why are all 50 of these metros clustered into just 3 specific inland regions? And more importantly, what's the economic catch to living there? Finding a home in today's economy requires a shift in priorities. Success depends less on the size of the down payment and more on the specific coordinates of the search area. The first and absolute cheapest cluster sits squarely in the Rust Belt and Appalachia. This is where you find the lowest typical home values on the entire list, with Charleston sitting near $147,000 and Youngstown, Ohio hovering around $172,000. To understand these rock-bottom prices, you have to look backward. These are legacy industrial centers constructed to house massive populations during their mid-century manufacturing peaks. When the industry scaled back, the population shrank, leaving behind a massive surplus of standing housing. You can see the scale of the infrastructure that originally drove these local economies. Sprawling riverfront factory complexes like this employed thousands, and those workers needed millions of homes that are still sitting there today. But look at the one-year change column on this table. While legacy cities in West Virginia and Louisiana are seeing negative growth, Midwestern hubs within this same cluster are quietly surging. Peoria is up 8.2%, and Rockford spiked 9% in a single year. Those specific spikes aren't accidents. Midwestern hubs like Peoria have serious economic bones, anchored by massive heavy industry facilities like Caterpillar manufacturing. That underlying infrastructure gives them the capacity to attract a sudden real estate renaissance. So the Rust Belt actually offers 2 distinct realities right now: stagnant, flatline deals for the strictly budget-conscious, and hidden momentum boomtowns for investors. If we shift our focus downward, we hit the second distinct geographic cluster, the Deep South. Here, we find markets like Shreveport, Louisiana, Macon, Georgia, and Mobile, Alabama. These cities manage to keep their prices hovering right below the $200,000 mark through a specific mix of local economics. They have abundant buildable land, a generally lower cost of living, and drastically lower regulatory barriers for developers trying to build new construction. The region has a long historical pattern of building outward rather than upward. You can see it in sprawling, low-density commercial footprints like the Wineacres complex. When a region can simply expand horizontally without running into geographic or regulatory walls, land and therefore housing stays cheap. And unlike those sudden spikes we saw in the Midwest, a quick glance at the one-year trajectory for these southern markets reveals exceptionally flat, stable growth. The Deep South serves as the United States real estate baseline. It offers pure, predictable affordability, entirely removed from the extreme volatility of coastal booms or industrial busts. That brings us to the single most statistically dominant state on the entire Zillow list. Texas claims an astonishing 11 out of the 50 total spots, bringing in cities like Beaumont, McAllen, and Lubbock. This map illustrates how these secondary and tertiary Texas cities act as safety valve markets. They are artificially propped up by absorbing the massive population overflow from hyper-expensive, high-pressure hubs like Austin and Dallas. Because they are catching the runoff from those economic powerhouses, these safety valve markets sit at the absolute upper boundary of our affordability list, clustering heavily in the $210,000 to $254,000 range. The sheer volume of Texas cities on this list proves that true affordability still exists inside high-growth states, provided you're willing to buy just outside the blast radius of a major economic boom. But there is a trade-off. Securing a home for under $200,000 almost always requires sacrificing the perks of a major coastal city. You are trading away Tier 1 amenities, elite school districts, and high-paying local economic engines for pure square footage. That calculus, however, changes completely when we introduce remote work as the wild card. For many high-earning professionals, a localized salary is simply no longer a strict requirement. We are watching millennials and Gen Z weaponize their coastal remote salaries to buy their way into these specific inland clusters. It is an active geographical arbitrage that is altering historical migration patterns. The influx of out-of-state capital flows directly into the basic infrastructure of these communities. These utilitarian storefronts are the essential service hubs of the towns that a new wave of buyers is betting on for the long term. Affordable home ownership still has a footprint in the American landscape. Finding it simply requires looking at a different set of coordinates.